With the Lutzes underground, interest in the Amityville horror story was building, and New York TV station Channel 5 were determined to get the scoop.
I got in touch with George Lutz and said, your family needs help, because they were clearly terrified.
Laura called in a celebrated pair of psychic investigators based in Connecticut, Ed and Lorraine Warren.
The type of work that we do is investigation into the paranormal, the supernatural, the preternatural, from haunting phenomena caused by human spirits or through poltergeist activity or the demonic inhuman hauntings. We've worked on numerous possession cases and exorcisms, and Warner Brothers has the rights to our life.
George Lutz met us at the edge of the property. He did not even want to step foot onto the grounds.
It was a horribly foreboding type of a feeling throughout the whole house. You knew that this house was infested by something other than human spirits.
When the Lutz family claimed that their home in Amityville was possessed, a local TV station assembled a team of psychics and arranged to film their investigation of the house.
They got parapsychologists, they brought in some other psychics, and it was arranged to go in there on the night of March 6, 1976.
Soon after the Channel 5 news team and their reporter Marvin Scott arrived at the house, people began behaving unusually.
Nothing happened to me, but things were happening to people around me.
The way people were affected was just crazy.
First thing that happened, our cameraman, Steve, got to the landing on the second floor, and all of a sudden he bent over, clutching his chest. He had stabbing chest pains.
The overwhelming impression was very sad.
I had the impression of a teenager who had done something that had changed his life entirely, and he had committed something horrendous.
When we went up to the second floor, of course the psychics could feel the remnants or the bad vibes. 6 people had been murdered violently there, you know, not 2 years before.
There was a window above me, and I saw a face of a young girl looking out at me. Then I heard crying, weeping. So I said, look to the white light, walk towards it, and everybody you love is waiting for you.
Lorraine, during the seance, said that she felt like there was some evil here that was from the bowels of the earth. It was not just the murdered spirits of the dead DeFeos.
I could see bodies all lined up, all with white sheets over them.
I got the impression of like hooded figures like monks right outside the door, closing the door well, looking in at me. I thought, uh-oh.
I get to the top and I go into a room, and Marvin Scott said to me, what is it? What is it? I said to him, I hope this is as close to hell as I'll ever get.
So I took the holy water and I opened it and I said, get thee behind me, Satan. And I went like that, and you could hear like water on a hot stove go tss, and then everything in the house stopped.
After the seance was over, we proceeded downstairs. At that point, Ed had his crucifix and he was leading Lorraine. He stopped at one point, almost as if he was like thrown back by a gust of wind. And he later described it as being assailed by, I think, a legion of demons.
It's like the rush of water against my chest, holding you back so powerfully.
Again, as a reporter, I have to tell you, I did not see anything, I did not feel anything, other than the reaction of Ed, Lorraine, the other psychics, and the other people around me. At 2 in the morning, I remember Marvin Scott turning to me and saying, we don't have it. In other words, this was not The Exorcist for television.
Although nothing happened for the TV cameras, one photograph taken that night would later apparently reveal a mysterious presence.
The camera was set up in a tripod and it just automatically shot off a flash photograph every few moments. And there were rolls and rolls of film of this particular doorway. It was into our daughter Missy's room. The photographs were being cataloged by a secretary I had years later in California. And she was pregnant. And every time she picked up this one particular picture, the baby inside her jumped.
And lo and behold, on the second floor, in the doorway of one room, there is the distinct figure of a little boy peering out from the doorway. There were no children in the house that night. So it's like, okay, where did this come from?
And we called Missy and asked her, who was this? And she said, oh, that's the boy I used to play with there. First we had heard of that.
The Lutzes never returned to 112 Ocean Avenue. The bank reclaimed the property, and their possessions were auctioned off. George and Kathy moved to California, claiming that they needed to escape the influence of the house and the glare of publicity as their story gathered momentum.
Amityville becomes a sensation, and it's everywhere. It's in the news. It's all over Long Island. It's on the tips of everyone's tongue. Have you heard about this case, which is a compendium of all of the most horrific things that have ever happened in the paranormal, all in one case?
The psychics came out of the woodwork, exorcists, parapsychologists, vampirologists. Every one of them came out of the woodwork with a theory that they knew exactly what had happened there.
Among those joining the party was Professor Dr. Hans Holzer, America's most famous ghost hunter.
I particularly like this picture that clearly shows a white outline of a horse overimposed over me. Now it so happens that the entity in the house that was disturbed was an Indian chief on a horse.
Hans Holzer had been introduced to me as a man who had written about 50 books in the psychic arena, poltergeists and ghosts in the White House, ghosts in every house he's ever visited.
On January the 13th, 1977, Holzer, William Weber and Laura DiDio entered the house with renowned deep trance medium Ethel Johnson Myers.
The only thing you need is a good deep trance medium so that if an entity is present, they can use the vocal cords of the medium to make a conversation with me.
It's very eerie and quite shocking to see the physical transformation that this woman underwent.
As soon as we got out of the car, before we even entered the house, she said, "There's an Indian around here."
All of a sudden, she developed an Adam's apple.
After a while, this lady began talking in a strange, jabberish language.
Her voice dropped several octaves.
And she was talking with an Indian chief who was buried on that land.
Why are they angry?
Because it's been a sacred place, and this is over the very, very special chief. Oh, I can't move my face.
This turned out to be an Indian cemetery that had been used to build houses on, very much to the dismay of the Indian who was buried there.
And what does he make them do?
Violence of death. I don't know, my skull's cracked and my neck's stretched.
What will the male do under those circumstances?
Anything the Indian desires him to do.
Despite the fact that the people have said it's the most haunted house in America, it is not a truly haunted house. There are no ghosts there. There are no spirits there except the Indian chief. And what he wanted, from his point of view, was get off my land.
As the theories multiplied about what was in the house, Amityville was about to become a publishing sensation.
All of a sudden, it's a book. The book, for whatever reason, took off. I can't describe how quickly. It became an instant bestseller.
I think their initial printing was 25,000 books, and they had never printed anything even close to that with the first printing. And it sold out as soon as it reached the bookstores. It was rather quite phenomenal.
It was clear that this story of a haunted house had the power to captivate millions.
The idea that this actually happened to people makes those people closer, because if it's not out of somebody's imagination, then it's real and could really happen to them.